Welcome to the Cricket Badger IPL Daily Podcast 2021, the Indian Premier League 14th edition. It's great to have you with us. From the first match all the way to the final. Chennai Super Kings, Delhi Capitals, Kolkata Knight Riders, Mumbai Indians, Punjab Kings, Rajasthan Royals, Royal Challengers Bangalore, Sunrisers Hyderabad. May the best team win. Brought to you in association with Who Knows Wins. Put your money where your mates are, and play along with the Cricket Badger.
Hello everybody, welcome along. It is another edition of the Cricket Badger podcast, IPL Daily, and we've seen a double header today. We've seen wins for the Delhi Capitals. They've kind of continued their charge towards a top two place. Level at the top of the table now with CSK, who we've just seen lose in the last match to Rajasthan Royals. A really spirited display by the Royals. And joining me to talk about all things IPL, all things, well, everything today is Abhishek and Abhay. Abhay, start with you. I didn't actually see the first game of the day. Mumbai Indians, my team. I was hoping yesterday's results gave Mumbai a little bit of a charge. They could have won today, got themselves into fourth place. It would have all been looking quite tasty. But Mumbai Indians falling to DC, and Axar Patel, man of the match, 5 balls to spare. Delhi Capitals got home. How did you see that one today?
Delhi would have been relieved, I would say. Even though they've qualified, I think Delhi were also very desperate to win this match because they have this habit of starting really well. Last 3 years, of course, they have a very big history, but last 3 years they've started well. Last time also in the IPL, in the second half they had a very bad downturn, I would say. And somehow, because other teams were also losing, they somehow managed to get into the finals and kept on losing to Mumbai and lost the finals. But this time they would be very wary of that, and they'd like to continue their winning momentum. So I actually thought that losing today could have been very bad for Delhi because they just lost a close encounter with KKR as well.
Yeah.
So it was good. I think Delhi was determined, just to answer to your question. More determined than MI, probably.
Good to see you on the podcast, Abhishek. And I've got a theory with Delhi Capitals. When it's been played in one long run, the IPL, Delhi have run out of steam. They've kind of got into the playoffs and kind of run out of steam in the playoffs just at the wrong time. I've got a theory that because it's been played in 2 chunks this time, they've got a little bit more energy and can maybe just see it all the way through to the final. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe this could be the year when we ideally see Delhi, getting their elusive title. I think they are a far better team than what the record suggests, right? And especially since their name was changed, especially in the last 3 years, right? We see year by year they have been done what is it? Especially if you see the bowling wise, right? I think all the 5 bowlers, right? You cannot even select a single weak link, right? I think that's the core strength, right? And it's often said that the bowlers are underestimated in the tournaments, right? So I think that this would, and I totally agree with Abhay, right? I think because probably I think the team most equipped to stop Delhi winning the title was MI, right? And if MI would have won, then nearly they would have reached the playoffs today. I think I think, right? So I think Delhi have done a very, what you could say, important job for them, right? And eventually now I see them as the favorites, right? Especially after the CSK debacle, right? So now I think that I agree with you that DC are the favorites for the title.
It was a nice little stand by between Shreyas Iyer and Ravichandran Ashwin that got them across the line today, Delhi. Rishabh Pant, 26 off 22 as well. The captain was instrumental too. I really do think Delhi can win it this time. And I mean, the tables will come to the middle of the table in a second, which is condensed as anything, and anybody could still take that 4th place apart from Sunrisers. But DC look to have got themselves in a really strong position. Obviously, this is a cycle. The way the auction kind of plays out, this is a cycle where this team is together for probably the last time for this tournament. This is their chance as a group to win it, isn't it?
Very much. The turnaround has been is a very nice sporting story, I would say. They kept losing all these years. Ricky Ponting took over in 2018, and he did not have a good start. Gautam Gambhir was their captain, and he left midway. and they gave captaincy to Shreyas Iyer, and somehow Ponting has take incrementally, improved the franchise slowly but surely.
Yeah.
And you're right. Before the mega auction, these guys are going to be very, very desperate and very keen. The owners as well, the new owners who took over from 2018, in fact 2019, and they'd be very keen that they can win this elusive title before the season ends, because you don't know what the rules will be. We don't know how many players they'll be able to retain, and for guys like Shreyas Iyer and Rishabh Pant, they also don't know where the future what the future would hold.
Yeah.
So they'd also like to win this title before this year ends, and it's a good chance for them. But at the same time, I think they lack those, uh, you know, that extreme finishing skill. I feel with Delhi, they're a very good side, like Abhishek also explained, their bowling attack, but they lack somebody like a Pollard who will, win them out of nowhere. That's something I think is still lacking in Delhi, but you never know. They've played as a group, so this could be their year. They have a strong chance.
Well, Richard Panton, Shreyas Iyer, and a few of the others might disagree with you about being able to win it out of nowhere, but we'll see how that goes. I mean, Delhi have been edging ever closer during this cycle, haven't they? The win is the only thing that they've been missing. But Mumbai Indians, Abhishek, they're my team. I don't make a secret of that on the podcast anymore. And I mean, Sharjah has been a low scoring ground this time around. When we saw it in 2020, that was where all the 200 plus scores were coming from. But it's a slower, lower surface there. That didn't seem to suit Mumbai today. Top score from Surya Kumar Yadav with 33. But Mumbai are really missing out on runs at the moment, aren't they? They haven't really got a batsman that's firing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest issues that Mumbai had this season, right, is their batting, right. I could not ideally find the fault with their bowling, right. Instead, even if we see today's game, right, the bowlers gave it all, right. I think they nearly took it to the 19th over, and then they tried to close it up, right. So I think I am still at fault to find out what happened with Mumbai. If I say still, point by point, I think they have the best squad, right. I think most of the players that they have are also part of the India's World Cup squad, the domestic squad that they have, right? So I don't know what happened. I think sometimes, like even Rohit Sharma said, right? We are even doing the same things in the what you could say practice. We are also doing the same thing in our trainings, right? But it's just not getting executed. Every time we talk about movement is like even if I talked about right, the batting line was so deep, right? You have the likes of the Pandya brothers, and then you have Pollard, right? That they finish games, right? Something that CSK posted on, like with the likes of Bravo, right? In the list, Bravo, Karan, and Jadeja, right? So I don't know what happened, right? But yeah, absolutely, I agree with you, right? That the batting has been a very big sore point, and it's been all across the tournament, right? From the Indian leg to the UAE leg, right? I'm still at fault to find out what went wrong, right? If Rohit Sharma is not able to find out, I don't think I can. But I agree with the point.
Let's move on to the second game as well. A really spirited display today, Abai, by Rajasthan Royals. CSK scoring a very good score, but Rajasthan Royals came out all guns blazing. They went along at an express rate from the very start. I jotted down after 10.4 overs. CSK had been 69 for 2, still made a very nice score off the back of that as well. Reaching, what was it, 189 for 4 in their 20 overs. We'll come to Rasiraj Gaikwad's innings in a second. But at the same stage, 69 for 2 CSK, Rajasthan Royals 123 for 2. They basically almost got double the runs at that stage, and it made it for a very comfortable chase in the end. And they've boosted their net run rate. They've gone ahead of Mumbai Indians in that gaggle of teams on 10 points. They can take a huge amount of confidence out of that because CSK have been the form side in the tournament so far, and Rajasthan Royals have destroyed them really today.
Very much, and they've got Punjab to thank as well. I mean, Punjab failed to
Yeah.
score 8 runs of last 2 overs, so I think they've been a bit lucky as well in at certain situations, but they've not given up. I remember in the first leg of this IPL, we were having a podcast and we were kind of like, okay, Rajasthan are not going to um, uh, go that deep in this tournament. We had such kind of a podcast, but they've proven us wrong. They've got
It's
limited
amazing, Abai, how
resources.
sometimes we do get it wrong, don't we, on here?
Yeah, we do. um, and Now if you see, they don't have so many superstars, not even international superstars. I understand Lewis and Livingston, these guys are dangerous, but they're not the number one players in their national sides. So somehow they are getting everything together. Mustafizur's form has helped them as well. So yes, they'd be very happy. And what a chase today! What a chase, because um, they came very determined and they did not stop. I think Shivam Dubey was also looking for an opportunity, and he did not disappoint Rajasthan.
Ruturaj Gaikwad, though, Abhishek, terrific century from him today. Finishes on the losing side, but he's got the orange cap on. There's a big race, isn't there, for the on the batting side of things for the orange cap. The purple cap looks a little bit more settled, and with an out and out winner leader in Harshit Patel. But Ruturaj has the orange cap at the moment. He's the man in possession, and he's the man playing very nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we have to say about the player of the season, I would say Rituraj is the man, right? Across the formats, right? Across the grounds, right? Be it Sharjah, Abu Dhabi, wherever, right? His game and against all the bowling lineups that he has faced, amazing, right? And one important thing is that generally when we talk about the openers, right, in T20, we talk about the sloggers, right? The someone who's pushing the ball. He's the one what you could heard of a very classy, elegant, and talks about the timing game, right? And still finishes, especially if we talk about the last two balls today, right, when you're stuck at 95, right, and the second the penultimate ball was a dot, right. You could see that mental, what you could say, stringency there, right. He was like, it's okay, and then he flagged it up with a
Yeah.
deep heave over the mid wicket, right. So an absolute asset, and a big credit goes to the Super Kings franchise, right, which persisted with him last year when he debuted with string of zeros, right? So that's how when we talk about the side like Mumbai Indians, CSK, the KKRs, right? They nurture their players, they back it up. They did it with legends like Shane Watson, but Rithu are an absolute legend this season.
It's really pleasing from an Indian perspective, I guess, to see for Rajasthan Royals the two guys that did the damage were two youngsters with the bat. Anyway, Yashashri v JS 50 from 21. 6 4s and 3 6s for him. Strike rate of 238 today. He came out of the blocks, all guns blazing. She had a really express opening stand with Evan Lewis. They look a very, very dangerous opening partnership. And then Shivam Dubey promoted a little bit up the order to get an opportunity. Was told to go out there and not take his foot off the gas and to see it home, boost the net run rate and make sure. 64 from him. Career best score for him today. 4 4s and 4 6s. Played very nicely too. But two youngsters there that are taking their opportunities today.
Yes, totally. And that's what IPL is about. So yes, good news for Indian cricket. Also more headaches to handle, because they'll have more selection conundrums.
Well,
But
every time I buy, sorry to interrupt, but every time one of these lads does something special, I hear, well, why don't they try him in the T20 World Cup? I mean, if they took everybody that showed some promise in this IPL, there'd be a
yes,
squad of about 85 going to the T20 World Cup, wouldn't there?
I think we all get a little emotional with the performances, and we are all
Carried
desperate to
away is the word, Abby. Carried away, isn't it?
carried away. Yes, probably that is the right word, because
Yeah.
it's the World Cup, and there is a process to select the team. I'm sure the selectors will also be looking at the performances right now, but you can't get carried away this way. Coming back to these performances, James, Shivam Dubey last year as well played at number 4, and I thought he made some nice 20s, but he couldn't carry on.
Hmm.
And I was a bit surprised that why he was not being played. I won't blame the management, because probably having Parag, uh, Dubey and Tewatia makes the middle order, lower middle order, bit weak.
On that, I'm not saying it's easy to score a quick 20 by any means, because that takes some doing, but that probably comes with experience, doesn't it? And comes with thinking about your game. The ability to make a quick 20 probably is in range of quite a lot of the young batsmen in this tournament. But to turn your 20 into a 50 or a 60 or better takes a little bit more mental strength. It takes, I'm not going to give this up now. I'm in now. I'm going to make them pay. And that's what he did today, wasn't it?
Yes, very much. Combining this part with your original question, I think uh, I would say today that Jaiswal and Dubey's innings just shows that the management have to also back you, as Abhishek also pointed out regarding Ruturaj, and also they saw a lot of failures last year,
Yeah.
and RR stuck with them. The RR management stuck with them. Both Jaiswal as well as Dubey both didn't have a good season last year, and this goes to show that when the management backs you, and you come after some failures, you can actually do better. So both proved that this IPL.
And Abhishek Jaiswal, we've talked about him before on this podcast, but his story, I mean, it is one of the real rags to riches stories of the IPL. You see a lot of these youngsters come from very humble beginnings. Jaiswal left home very early. He was living in a tent. He was living in a groundsman's hut. He basically ended up almost being adopted, I think, by a groundsman at a certain ground to give him the opportunity to play cricket on a regular basis. But he was effectively homeless, walking around just trying to find a way to sell a few things to just keep himself going. Cricket being the dream, and it's just a wonderful story of somebody who's got a little bit of inner belief, somebody that's got. I mean, mate, obviously coming from nothing, anything's better than nothing. So, any success would have been good for him. But to have gone from that start to where he is today is just inspirational, isn't it?
Absolutely, James. I think that's the real beauty about IPL, right? Apart from the superstars like the trophy winnings and everything, right? It gives a platform to a lot of players, right? A lot of players which come from a very humble background, like you talked about, right? Some of the people who have no resources, but what they have is just the mental resilience, right? The dreams, right? And the talent, right? Overcoming a lot of hardships and then getting an opportunity, right? And then to be able to be nurtured by a franchise like that, we talked about, right? The last season did not go as well as planned, right? But they saw the talent in the trainings, in the selection camps, and everything, right? And that's the real story, the real beauty of it. You get talents like this. There's not only a single example. There are a lot of other examples. Even the Asif, the KM Asif
Yeah.
that we talked about from the Super Kings, right? He's one of the same, right? So that's the real beauty of IPL, right? And in the end, it shows that if you have the mental resilience, a bit of the luck, I agree with that part, right? And a lot of talent, right? Magic do happens in life, and these are the magic story I think which makes us fall in love with the game.
Well, you mentioned Asif there. I mean, Nakul on our WhatsApp group sent a couple of stories through of Crick Info today. One of them was about Asif, who basically went to the UAE, was living in a room with 7 other people. Cricket was his first love, but he was just trying to make a living, but still had the dream, still inside his heart. He wanted to be a cricketer. And again, I think it was his only his third performance today for CSK, but he bowled really nicely, Abhishek, today. And I just love these stories of people who are just looking to make their lives better. I mean, they have now the potential, particularly Jaiswal, who's a real talent, to land a really big deal in the mega auction. And he's obviously already earning decent money, but he could treble that or quadruple that or become a millionaire, couldn't he, effectively?
Yeah, absolutely. I think these dreams, right? This
In
something
dollar
that
terms, that was because in Craw you can become a millionaire a bit quicker, can't you?
yeah, I think all the domestic Indian batsmen, right, or not even batsmen, the bowlers, right? Obviously, you have a rule of right at 4 to 7, right? So obviously, being an Indian, right, nationality, right, brings you a lot of what you could say happiness and option, right? So I think obviously these type of miracles happen. It keeps happening. It has happened in the last full decade, right? And we can hope that Yashasvi Jaiswal can bag a big paycheck like Jaydev Unadkat in the last 2 seasons.
I it is. I mean, it must be really inspirational, Abhay, for a youngster out there in India who, regardless of what background they come from, whether they're from an affluent family or whether they're living in a village with next to nothing and their parents are struggling to make ends meet, just watching the IPL on your TV every day and seeing these guys who are like you, who have come from where you've come from and have been able to make it. That is you can see the path in front of you, can't you, as a youngster?
Very much. I was just thinking you always manage to bring the non-cricketing aspect as well to the podcast, which is great. And I just remembered that while we were growing up, there was no IPL.
Hmm.
So at that time, probably it used to look very far distant dream that we can represent India or make a name for ourselves as a cricketer, because every person plays cricket on the streets or in the parks around you. And now I'm sure with this the advent of IPL since 2008, I'm sure that now the children who are growing up can always think that, hey, there are more chances to make a name for yourself in the sport. uh, if we are on the sidelines of the Indian cricket, maybe we can be superstar in our IPL franchise, in an IPL franchise. So now I think people will have more hopes because of the advent of IPL. And I think the way IPL is going like towards with the 10 teams, I'm sure a lot of international superstars will also be more proactive towards coming into the IPL, because there'll be more opportunities for them as well. Even in the international youngsters, you see how David Warner started within the IPL.
Yeah.
Uh, so you'll have more examples also of international players.
And I guess, Abhishek, it's not just about the cricketers, not just about the players as well. If you've got a love of cricket, all of these franchises, they're big businesses, these teams. You've got, I mean, the visible part of that is the communication side, the social media channels, the all of the great footage that they send out as well. But there's many jobs behind the scenes in cricket too, and it gives somebody in India a chance to work in cricket who maybe isn't quite good enough to be a Jayaswal, but can hold a camera and edit some footage and stick that out. Yeah, there are other routes to make yourself a living in cricket in India, aren't there?
Absolutely, like you talked about the other operations part, right? For example, Mumbai Indians that I know about, they run a lot of cricket camps, right? It gives a lot of opportunity to the local empires, the local cricket coaches, right? The operation setup and people, right? So it's a whole ecosystem, like we talked about, right? The total ecosystem, right? Which percolates, right? And that's the ecosystem which drives people, right? Across, be it the perform, be it like we talked about the social media, the operations, and whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole ecosystem, and just wanting to add, right? I think IPL, what IPL has done is created a, what you could say, it has been an absolute leveler, right? Like there was some, what you could say, glass ceilings earlier, like when I talked about 10 to 12, 15 years before, right? You to have some connections and you to have some, playgrounds and everything, right? It has, batted them. The teams are reaching out to very lower, tier 2 or tier 3 cities, right? Getting the camps, taking the talents, and then also nurturing it for 1 2 years. The talents like Hardik Pandya, Jasprit Bumrah, they all came up from Mumbai Indians scouting talent, right? They were not absolute superstars, and now I think they'll be the number one in any team, right? Across the world in the T20 game. So totally agree. I think it's a fantastic ecosystem at a revolution, not only Indian cricket, but also for example, one of the important names, Sam Curran, right? Like talked about, right? One of the youngsters from England, right? And got a lot of opportunity from the IPL.
Should we play every IPL in the UAE, Aboy? Because basically, whenever we play in the UAE, the table scrunches up, the games get a little bit closer, and we get to the final couple of games of the group table. And apart from Sunrisers Hyderabad, they're all still in contention. The UAE seems to kind of squash everything up and make it more exciting.
I think even if it was played somewhere else, it would have been a close IPL anyway. The way IPL is, uh, with each year the level of competition is going up. So I don't think it's exactly because of UAE. That's my personal opinion. And since you asked where it should be played, I actually, as a fan, I want IPL to be played in other countries as well, like
You
England
want
and
it to be
Australia.
played in Sweden, I guess, don't you?
Not yet, not yet, but England and Australia for sure. I can travel to England then and meet you.
I'm more than happy to have it in England. We'll have the IPL in England next year. If you're watching Sourav Ganguly, I'm available and ready, and so is Abai, and Abhishek can come over as well. And the table, as it stands, there's the scrolling ticker across the bottom of the screen there with the match results from today. Wins, as we said, for Rajasthan Royals and for Delhi Capitals. Delhi Capitals have qualified already, but I mean, RCB are playing tomorrow. We'll come on to that in a minute. They're 4 points behind DC with a game played less, but you can see the standings coming across the screen there. CSK top on 18 points. You've got Delhi Capitals, and both of these teams have played 12 on 18 points. RCB played a game less on 14 points. KKR are on 10, having played 12. So are PKPS. Rajasthan Royals have got themselves into the same situation as well and just jumped above Mumbai Indians, who are also played 12. 10 points. SRH, you can forget about them. They're just basically going to be a stumbling block for a couple of teams over the last few rounds of games. RCB play them tomorrow. Let's talk about that quickly now. Don't want to get too deep into the discussion on this match, but SRH, Abhishek, could be a team who are at home effectively because they're out of the competition, but they could really wreck a few teams' chances, couldn't they? Over the next 3 matches they have to play. They're playing RCB tomorrow. Do you give them any chance to derail Virat Kohli's men?
I I think if you talk about SRH, right, they have a knack of like DC has a knack of faltering towards the SRH and of doing well, right. Still remember the season of 2019, they qualified with 12 points, right,
Actually, sorry, I'm
and even
wrong, aren't I? I'm wrong, aren't I? Punjab Kings take on the RCB
Punjab.
tomorrow. Yeah,
Oh,
Punjab Kings take double header tomorrow. That's where I got confused. It's RCB against Punjab Kings. It's KKR taking on the Sunrisers in their 12th game. KKR obviously losing their last match. They're in that gaggle on 10 points. RCB are just slightly ahead of that. Another win for them, I think, pretty much gets them into the playoffs. But it doesn't kind of change the emphasis of the question. SRH can still be a bit of a thorn in the side of a few teams. KKR being the
yeah.
first one.
Yeah, so SRS has a knack of ending a tournament on a high, right? So we have seen it last time also. They won the 4 straight games and went to the playoffs, right? So definitely ability, but I don't think that tomorrow. I think they'll be able to stop KKR. I think KKR have the momentum to do that. I think Venkatesh Iyer is playing the role. If you remember the old KKR side, right, when Jack
Yeah.
Callis and Gautam Gambhir, right, they had someone right who created 70, 60 runs regularly, right? I don't think that happened. On the other side, though, I believe that probably Punjab will, wreck RCB's party. They have become something of a kryptonite for RCB, right? In last some years, right? They defeat them, or they also, badly defeat them. Already their NRR is very bad, right? So I do believe that Rahul will, again inflict a serious damage on his old sides. I expect KKR to be not wrecked by SRH, but probably I have big worries for RCB. I think he will again damage to the goal.
Punjab Kings have got a couple of tough games left. They've got RCB tomorrow, and I think they finish with CSK, which is, I mean, CSK might be home and hosed and relaxed a bit more by then, so that might be in Punjab Kings' favour. SRH's last 3 games has said that they take on KKR tomorrow, then Sunrisers take on RCB in their penultimate match, and then their final game is against Mumbai Indians. Mumbai Indians might be needing a win by that stage, Abai, to see them through to the playoffs. You never know how this table is going to turn out, because we'll get to we've already gone through the closeness of it, but 4 teams on 10 points having played 12 games, just the net run rate separates them. Every point from here, every win from here is vital. They probably need to win 2 matches, don't they, those teams, to get that 4th place. And even then, if another team does the same thing, it's not guaranteed. But Sunrisers could spoil Mumbai Indians' party before they go home, couldn't they?
Yes, as Abhishek also said, it's very much possible they do end well, but this is a different year for them, Sunrisers. They sometimes start slow, but they do get things together and do well, and then compete for the 4th position or the 3rd position. But this year has been pretty terrible for them. Even Rashid Khan is not able to really bring in great performances with the ball. I don't think they'll be able to uh, uh, create any upset as such. Won't be surprised because it has happened in IPL, but currently I don't see that happening. And maybe it's a good news for RCB and MI. So RCB, I think even if they lose tomorrow, since they have a game against SRH, they might be through to the playoffs.
Big game for KKR tomorrow, isn't it? Because if they do win, they have a far better net run rate than the other 3 teams currently on 10 points. KKR a plus 0.3, Punjab Kings minus 0.236, Rajasthan minus 0.337, and Mumbai Indians, the worst net run rate of the lot, minus 0.453. Net run rate could prove to be the difference between these 2 sides. So another 2 points for KKR. That net run rate almost gives them an extra point, doesn't it? So that would be a big result for KKR tomorrow. If I was to say to you quickly, both of you, those 4 teams, if we assume it's between those 4 teams for position 4, which is how it looks, KKR, Punjab Kings, Rajasthan Royals, or Mumbai Indians, which one do you think is going to qualify, Abhishek?
KKR.
Simple as that. Quick and easy. What about you, Abai?
Yes, so the heart says hopefully Punjab, but it's the way it's going. I agree with Abhishek. KKR are the ones who've really turned around, with their resources, and they are the ones who are really challenging this 4th spot.
So last 2 installations of the IPL, Abhishek, KKR have finished 5th, just outside, either on net run rate or they finished 5th, just missed out on the playoffs. They're going to be absolutely determined to avoid the same fate again this time. and they've got a really good chance, haven't they? Because as I say, they've got the best net run rate. They're at top of that pile of teams on 10. It's effectively in their hands, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like we talked about, they had near finishes, right? I think the fifth is the most painful spot. I think it's probably more painful than the eighth spot, right? So I think they would not like to go there, right? And I think Venkatesh Iyer has given them a spark, right? Every team needs a turnaround spark. CSK got with Ruturaj, right? So I think Iyer spark. I think Morgan is still a bit of an issue, right? I think the only thing that I see a concern in full 1 to 11, right? But I think he's still doing a decent enough captaincy, right? So I think I back, until they screw it too much, I think they will be done and dusted.
I'm going to finish off asking you two a question that I've been asking the other guys over the last few days. I'm going to put you in charge of a new franchise. You've got the pile of money in front of you, and there's all the rupees and crore there. I don't really understand Indian currency, so I just basically say the names of them, but you know better than I do. But you've got bags and bags of cash. You've got all of the money at your disposal. You've got the first pick coming up in the mega auction next time around. Who do you pick first, Abhishek? Which is the star player that you're going to spend the first amount of your loot on?
Jasprit Bumrah.
You're going to go with Jasprit. That's not a bad choice. Not a bad choice. The best bowler in the IPL at the moment. Well, in terms of talent, I think. Abai, what about you?
Can I say two? But the mind says
You
clearly.
can't do that in the mega auction. You can't say, you've got first pick, Abai. I'm going to have two, please, Mr. Auctioneer.
Correct. So I'll go with Kyron Pollard. Even though if you give me a choice to pick one player, it has to be an Indian player, because you, as a franchise, you want to see your future, and you want to see, okay, where do you take your franchise, and an Indian player suits that one pick. But on pure performance and the result orientation, I'll pick Kyron Pollard.
Well, you've gone for an overseas then with your first pick, Kieran Pollard. You've gone for an Indian player, Abhishek, with your first pick in Jasprit Bumrah. I'm going to come back to you, Abhishek, and I want you to pick an overseas player now as your second pick. Abhishek's really thinking hard here.
Quinton de Kock.
You're going to call Quinton de Kock. All right, so you've got Jasprit Bumrah and Quinton de Kock as your first two picks. I'm going to come back to you, Abai. You've picked an overseas player with your first pick. I want you to pick an Indian player now.
So you gave in to my wish now.
This is your second pick. You can't have two at a time. You're having one at a time.
Yes, I'll pick Rishabh Pant as somebody I would want to invest in for my franchise.
I have always said, when we've only had one pick on previous podcasts before Abai got difficult, I basically have always picked AB de Villiers because I want to take him out for lunch and basically just make him my friend. But he's the overseas pick. If I was going to go for an Indian selection, I think Abhishek's pick of Jasprit Bumrah is a very good one. But I think Virat Kohli. I'm going to go out for lunch with Virat Kohli and AB de Villiers every day. They don't have to play. I'm just going to become their mates, and we're going to go out and have a really good time. And that basically the IPL franchise might lose every match because I've taken the star players out for lunch every day. But I'd enjoy it, and it's my money because I'm in charge of this franchise. So there you go. That's why James's franchise is not going to that's probably why I'm not in charge of an IPL side, I think, because I just use it as a social event. Abhishek, the two abs on the podcast. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. It's been a pleasure catching up with both of you. I'll see you both again soon as we go through the rest of this competition. I'll tell you what, though, listeners, it is really hotting up. That table again sees, Delhi Capitals and CSK have kind of broken clear at the top. RCB are kind of hanging on to their coattails in third. They look pretty much nailed on to qualify for the playoff positions. But we have Kolkata Knight Riders, Punjab Kings, Rajasthan Royals and the Mumbai Indians all on 10 points, all with 2 matches to play. It could not get any closer for that race for the playoffs. We will not know until the final round who was qualified, and that's what makes this IPL a very, very special one indeed. We're back with you every single day as we go through the rest of this competition. So we'll chronicle the end of the group phases, and then we'll be in the playoffs, and then we'll find out who lifts that trophy. Hopefully for me, it'll be Mumbai Indians, but at the moment, 7th place, not looking particularly promising. I think, I'll tell you what, let's ask one question before we complete that sign-off, because I've not asked you this question yet. From what you've seen so far, from the 12/11 games for all of these sides, who is the best side in the competition? Who lifts the trophy, Abhishek?
Delhi Capitals.
And Abai?
Delhi Capitals. I'm anyway backing them since so many years. So, and also on skill basis, the way they've done. Yes, I agree. It's Delhi
I'm
Capitals.
gonna ask you. Going to come back with both of those because I know why you're answering that because they were a very good side. Is that a head answer or is that a heart answer, Abai?
Yeah, for me, heart was also there. I actually think somehow KKR is looking very strong. They're really punching above their weight. So, but heart took over. It's Delhi.
What about you, Abhishek? Was it a heart answer or a head answer?
It's the
Or
head answer.
is it your heart is with?
Rajasthan Royals.
They still have a massive chance, don't they? Still have a massive chance, RR, after today's. I mean, if they can put two performances like today together to finish off the group stage, you never know. And if you can get yourself into the playoffs with momentum behind you and with that confidence and that belief after almost being on the plane home in your heads at one stage in the competition, you never know how far that can take you. But we'll see how that pans out as we go through. Thank you for watching on the YouTube and Facebook channels that we've got. And thank you for listening on the more traditional podcast platform and this podcast out later on today. Thanks very much again, both to Abai and Abhishek. I've been James the Cricket Badger, and I'll see you again tomorrow.